This is Unit 5, and we are going to review adding and subtracting fractions with word problems today. So we have two guiding questions. The first is, what is the problem asking us to calculate? So what do we want to find? And the second one is, what is the relationship between the words in the problems and our mathematical equation? So we need to use the words and translate them into an equation. It always helps to try to visualize the problem to determine what you know and what you need to find out. And there are often key words to help you know if you're adding or subtracting. So let's look at an example. Here it says Benny picked 1 1/4 buckets of apples, and Elisa picked 1 1/2 buckets of apples. How many buckets did they pick? Well, how many buckets are your key words? So it looks like we're looking for a total. So first let's let a variable equal our buckets of apples. So I'm going to let B equal buckets. Then let's create our equation. We said Benny had 1 1/4 buckets, and Alyssa had 1 1/2 buckets, and that's going to equal our total buckets. So if we have 1 1/4, and we add 1 1/2, well, let's get them into improper fractions first. So 1 1/4 is like 4/4 plus 1/4, so that's going to be 5/4. And 1 1/2 is like 2/2 plus 1/2, and that's going to be 3/2. Now we need to get our common denominators. It looks like 4 can be our common denominator because 2 times 2 is 4 and 4 times 1 is 4. So let's let 4 be our common denominator. 5 times 1 is 5, so we stay with our 5/4. And 2 times 2 is 4, so 3 times 2 having trouble with my pen here. Again, that's 3 times 2, that's 6. So we have 5/4 and 6/4, and that's going to give us 11/4. Now we're not quite done. Remember, we need to make that improper fraction into a mixed number. So if we divide 4 into 11, it'll go 2 times. It's too bad that we don't see 12 there, because 12 would be an even 3. So that would be 2 and 3/4. And let's just look at a check to make sure we're on the right track. So if we start with 1 1/4 and we add 1 1/2 buckets, we're going to end up with 2 3/4 buckets. So that totally makes sense. So down here in my answer spot, I'm going to write 2 3/4 buckets. Okay, so now let's go on and look at a different problem. Here we have 1/12 of foot of fabric is needed to make a coat, while 5/8 of a foot of fabric is required to make a rug. How much more fabric is needed to make a rug versus a coat? Well, we know that there's more fabric needed to make the rug. So we could start with the rug and subtract what we need for the coat to find out how much more fabric is needed. Well, first we're asked to find out how much more fabric. So let's just let F be our variable, and F will be fabric. And our equation then would be 5/8 minus 1/12 is going to equal our fabric. So I'm going to write them vertically because it's always easiest to subtract when I write vertically. And first I need to find a common denominator. Well, if I start with 12, because it's the bigger number, so it's sometimes easier to start with 12. I know 8 doesn't go into 12. Our next multiple would be 24. Whoa, and 8 does go into 24. When I'm counting by 8s, I have 8, 16, and then 24. So let's use 24 as our common denominator. Now, I know 8 times 3 is 24. And I know that 5 times 3, it doesn't look like my pen wants me to do half circles. That's the deal here. Okay, so we'll do 15. So this is 5 times 3, and this is 8 times 3. And now we have 12 times 2, because that gets us to 24, and 1 times 2 would be 2. So now if we subtract, we have 15 24ths minus 2 24ths. So that's 13 24ths. 13 is prime. So if I'm looking to reduce, unless 13 goes into 24, I'm already in lowest terms. So since it doesn't, 13 and 13 make 26, this is my answer. So let's see if that makes sense. So I'm going to draw a picture, and this is 24 parts, and 15 are shaded. So this represents my 15 24ths. This represents 2 24ths. So this is what I need for the rug, and this is what I need for the coat. If I put those together, I know that, and subtract it, I know that I'm going to have this much extra fabric for the rug. So that means I have 13 24ths left. If I count 1, 2, 3, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 24ths makes sense. So in my answer spot, I'm going to write 13 24ths foot of fabric. That's how much more is needed to make the rug. Now let's have you try some. Sarah did 1 1/10 loads of laundry on Wednesday and 1 3/10 loads of laundry on Thursday. What fraction did Sarah do in total? So in total is my key word. Wonder what that means. So go ahead and try that problem. Next problem. Sally wants to complete 7/15 of a crossword today. She has already done 2/7 of the crossword. What fraction of the crossword does Sally have left to finish? So my key words here would be left to finish. Okay, try that one. And the last one, for the school's sports day, a group of students prepared 21.5 liters of lemonade. At the end of the day, they had 2 5/8 liters left over. How many liters of lemonade were sold? So we know that they had this much left over, and we want to know how much they sold. I wonder what I'm going to do. Go ahead and try that problem. And before you finish, tell me something that you learned or were reminded of, and a question that you have.